But ending the conflict is not so simple as just calling it off and coming home, because the price for that kind of peace could be 1,000 years of darkness for generations yet unborn.
On January 8, 1973, Henry Kissinger and Le Duc too restarted their talks in Paris. In 6 days, they hammered out an agreement. This time, the Americans had told the South Vietnamese that they would get no more U.S. financial aid if they opposed the deal. On the 27th of January, 1973, all the warring parties signed a ceasefire. Although the Americans had left Vietnam and a peace treaty had been signed, few Vietnamese believed that the war was over for them. The agreement had left 200,000 northern troops occupying strong positions inside the South. In Laos, the Ho Chi Minh Trail was modernized while engineers began building a proper two-lane road just inside South Vietnam. It would be able to take heavy trucks and tanks from the north to within 70 miles of Saigon. Engineers also began laying 3,000 miles of fuel pipeline planned to run from the demilitarized zone to the Mekong Delta. By December 1974, the North Vietnamese Army's main supply route from the demilitarized zone to Loc Ninh was complete. The strategic raids had pushed the South Vietnamese Army towards the coast. Northern artillery now threatened several major cities. In the Saigon area, Northern forces had gained ground on 3 sides of the capital. The new North Vietnamese plan was to try and seize Dong Xoa, a vital road junction controlling access to Saigon from the east. On December 26, 1974, the 7th NVA Division captured Dong Xoa. Next came diversionary attacks to pin down South Vietnamese forces. Phuc Long, an important province and city, was now threatened by 2 NVA divisions and 2 infantry regiments, backed by tanks and artillery. The North Vietnamese forces encircling Phuc Long city were more than 15,000 strong. By January 6, 1975, the North Vietnamese had overrun Phuc Long city and the surrounding province. The loss of Phuc Long was a disaster for the South Vietnamese. Confidence in President Thieu fell to a new low. The skill and strength of the North Vietnamese divisions had been a shocking revelation. Worst of all, the most blatant breach of the Paris Treaty yet seen in Vietnam had produced no reaction from the United States. To North Vietnamese leaders, the latest battles were proof that the Americans would not use their air power to defend South Vietnam. There was also good news from the Soviet Union, the promise of huge quantities of extra weapons and supplies. The Soviets were keen to increase their influence in the region and believed they were backing a winner. Even though North Vietnam now had the support it needed, its leaders still meant to move cautiously. But General Tran Van Tra, the commander in charge of Southern forces, pushed for decisive action. Once more, he won agreement for a sizable attack, but not for a full-scale campaign. The final offensive was named the Ho Chi Minh Campaign. For the assault, the NVA deployed 250,000 men and hundreds of tanks. The troops were superbly equipped and supported by massed artillery. And as they advanced south, they made use of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment abandoned by the South Vietnamese. Behind them was a vast and sophisticated supply system. North Vietnamese transport aircraft and ships were now ferrying men and materials into captured airfields and ports in South Vietnam. The northern plan was to encircle and destroy the remaining defenders outside the capital. That way, the NVA might avoid costly street fighting and the destruction of the city. On April 25, 1975, they launched their final assault. One by one, the defending South Vietnamese divisions were cut off and overwhelmed. On April 28th, as NVA forces pressed in on the city, General Minh was sworn in as president. Attacks on Tan Son Nhut Airport closed its runways. Only helicopters now offered a way out. Starting on April 29, 1975, U.S. Marine and Air Force helicopters flying from carriers offshore began a massive airlift. In 18 hours, over 1,000 American civilians and almost 7,000 South Vietnamese refugees were flown out of Saigon. Shortly before noon, T-54 tanks of the NVA 2nd Corps rolled through the gates of the presidential palace. The bitter war, which ended on April 30th, 1975, had claimed the lives of huge numbers of Vietnamese. In 15 years, nearly 1 million NVA and NLF troops and 250,000 South Vietnamese Army soldiers had died. Hundreds of thousands of civilians had been killed. After the victory, Northern officials moved quickly to take control of every aspect of Southern life. Even the NLF had little say as Hanoi tightened its grip. Soon, hundreds of thousands of people, officers and men from the South Vietnamese Army, and those believed tainted by the old regime, would be sent to re-education camps. Some years later, starting in 1978, 500,000 more would risk death fleeing in small boats across the open sea. Although the war was over, peace in Indochina did not last long. Within 5 days of the fall of Saigon, Khmer Rouge troops who had taken power in Cambodia carried out the first of many border attacks, killing more than 30,000 Vietnamese. On December 25, 1978, Vietnam invaded Cambodia to liberate the population from the genocidal rule of Pol Pot. China, Pol Pot's ally, retaliated by attacking Vietnam. This conflict would cost another 100,000 lives.
At the end of the war, 10,000 men who served the losing South Vietnamese government were locked up for re-education. So, Major, this is the camp in here. This is the camp? This is it? Uh-huh. How many people in here? About 400. 479. When did you build the camp? 1975. Uh-huh. This is where the people live? How you doing? Anybody speak English? Can you speak English? How long have you been here in this camp?
10 years ago.
You've been in this camp 10 years?
No, 5 years.
5 years here. Where were you before?
Major.
You were a major before. How are they treating you here? You get enough? Do you get enough food? You get enough food? Not enough?
I don't know why the meaning of enough or not enough.
Yeah. Are you hungry? You get meat?
Okay, everybody did food, everything,
but not enough. Not enough. It's pretty hard in here, isn't it? It's a tough life. It's a tough life.
but you know, I cannot answer about your question.
Why? Because the guys standing around here make you nervous? A lot of people feel abandoned by the Americans, okay? Please give a message to President Reagan. What do you want to tell him?
Every prisoner in this camp would like to have freedom life. And I think that the freedom world can save us.
Save you.
Save us. Bring us out as quick as possible.
Đây cũng là đoạn phim duy nhất thu hình được tại trại tập trung cải tạo Hàm Tân vào năm 1984. 9 năm sau, ngày các sĩ quan cán bộ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa bị bắt tập trung. Trước áp lực của Hoa Kỳ và thế giới tự do, chính quyền Cộng sản Việt Nam đã di chuyển những sĩ quan và cán bộ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa bị tập trung về Hàm Tân và cho phép phóng viên Mỹ quay phim. Dù là trình diễn, nhưng những hình ảnh này với những ánh mắt và ngôn ngữ của tù nhân, người xem sẽ thấy được sự chịu đựng đói khổ trong cảnh tù đầy, nhưng cũng thấy luôn nét can trường của những tù nhân chính trị trong trại giam. Và đặc biệt, người sĩ quan cụt chân trong đoạn phim này chính là Thiếu tá Lê Hữu Cương, khóa 16 Võ Bị Đà Lạt, quận trưởng quận Củ Chi. Chúng tôi đã tìm ra được ông là ai, nhưng nay ông cũng không còn nữa.
Tôi tin tưởng sâu xa vào sự hòa giải giữa người Việt Nam để khỏi xí phạm xương máu người Việt Nam. Vì lẽ đó, tôi yêu cầu tất cả các anh em chiến sĩ Việt Nam Cộng Hòa hãy bình tĩnh, ngưng nổ súng và ở đâu ở đó. Chúng tôi cũng yêu cầu anh em chiến sĩ chính phủ cách mạng lâm thời Cộng hòa miền Nam Việt Nam ngưng nổ súng, vì chúng tôi ở đây chờ gặp chính phủ cách mạng lâm thời Cộng hòa miền Nam Việt Nam để cùng nhau thảo luận về lễ bàn giao chính quyền trong vòng trật tự và tránh sự đổ máu vô ích của đồng bào.